Scano, good afternoon. Nice to see everyone. We made it. Now we're just missing one more. Andrea, she's making her way. Good afternoon. Welcome everyone that will join us in a few minutes or that's with us now. And for those of you who will join us later, hi. Thanks for showing up to the environmental. Um, do we call it environmental? What's this collective called?
Environmental Collective.
Exactly, right? And it means so much. I've had a couple of people say, like, what does environmental mean? And the conversations we've had here are not just about the environment outside and with Mother Earth. It's the environment just in relationship with all things, people, everything in our lives, just being more conscious of the environment. And so as I mentioned that, just going to say that I'm the environment I'm in today is in St. Catharines with a friend of mine, Jess, at her company, Giant Shoe Creative Agency, and they're supporting Grandmother's Voice and 101 Dewagons, supporting the Indigenous movement, and just a really amazing collective here. And so I'm honored to be in their space and working with them. And being downtown, they have beautiful windows. We're able to just see how gorgeous of a day this is. The sun is shining. Today's a nice warm day. People are getting ready for summer, and you can just see there's a little more love in the air. So just acknowledge all the beautiful energies that the Creator, gave us to to be here, to be able to do this work together and show up to support each other. So I just want to say thank you again for showing up. And today's a conversation we're having about invasive species. So we'll turn it over to Mary and Kevin and have them introduce themselves. Thank you so much again for showing up for Grandmother's Voice platform. Collaboration is really important. So Scano, again, and welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Brown, and I am with Sustainable Milton. I lead the events there, and I've only been with this team for 3 years, and I would say 3 years ago when I was working, I knew so little about plants and the environment, like species that were around, and I have just gained so much information about what we should be growing, trying to grow in the backyard, what we should be appreciating, what the bees and the insects and the butterflies and all the species want to appreciate when we seem to keep taking it away. So we want to bring that back. And so I think that's really what we're trying to talk about today. And I've learned about I have in my backyard so many plants, as we all do, right? They're not necessarily bad plants. They're just plants that don't help any insects. And so, and it's particularly the ones that are very aggressive that are a challenge because they tend to take up space for the native plants to grow. So that's the space where I'm at. I'm just learning. But Kevin here knows a lot more about this stuff than I do.
I'm also learning every day when I'm out there. It's a funny thing. Our school system kind of fails us in the sense that we don't have enough of that outdoor ed, outdoor forestry, all that kind of stuff. Because if you take the average, and this has changed, but maybe 15, 20 years ago, they said when you took the average South American kid, even like a rural South American kid, they could identify, say, 70 to 100 plant species. And then if you took the silhouette of a corporate logo without like Canadian Tire or Tim Hortons and just the silhouette, they could recognize like 15 or 20. And then the flip side was happening in North America where they could do 120. So yeah, I mean it's a bit of a failing there, and it's all of our collective faults for dropping the ball on having a better connection and a better understanding of nature and the world around us. So yeah, and I learn all the time. I see bugs all the time because I'm out crawling in the gardens and looking at things and really trying to be a little more observant of what's happening, from colors on leaves and how things are growing to the bugs that are around those, because those go hand in hand. If you have a pest that's feeding underground on roots and stuff, root feeding nematodes and all that kind of things, you start to really appreciate and realize how little you know when you're looking at these things. So yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, Andrea.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I haven't even had a chance to wash my hands. I was
Perfect.
out.
Neither have I.
Yeah. I was out just installing. Oh, I've got my camera blurring my messy background here. Installing a butterfly way garden, one of the David Suzuki. I'm a ranger, and so we're fellow rangers and I were out this morning installing a butterfly garden at a childcare center, and hoping to solve some of these gaps in knowledge that are happening with our little ones, and teaching them about some of the creepy crawlies that we want to protect and maybe some that we want to deter.
Yeah. I know when you talk about the creepy crawlies, I really feel that like, because I do a lot of work with like young girls because of my involvement with Girl Guides. And I find so many of them are more afraid or, cautious about bugs because they're not, when I say bugs, insects in general, they just aren't used to seeing them. They don't know what they do. They don't know if they're going to sting them, or they don't, And so to them, they're all creepy crawlers. But then when you pick them up in your hand and you show them to them, and they're just beautiful. They're just a beautiful piece of nature. And I really, really hope that, over the years, I can kind of bring that back to, the young people about how gorgeous they are when you look at them, right?
Yeah. We did, the town of Oakville did an event during Emergency Preparedness Week around climate change and what to do if there's an extreme weather event. And so I was there as part of the, nature is part of the solution. And so we were doing seed balls and talking about, the whole Butterfly Way project. And this is how I got started, was with young kids bringing me, what is this? What is this bug? What is this type of spider? And some of them we really need to protect. And a lot of them are disappearing. I think we were talking not too long ago about the number of bugs that splatter on your windshield. I don't have that problem anymore. It's a real sign of how, the populations are dwindling, and we need to take better care of our ecosystems.
I love how Grandmother Renee talks to the young ones about, how important those little critters are, and, how she teaches about them to the young ones. And I think that, that's a real example. How children are afraid of bugs is a real example, like you said, Kevin, how we show up in the world. And, our kids pick up what we pick up. So you see a spider and, they, a mom or someone kills it, and all of a sudden that's what kids are doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that, we're in a time right now where there's some, really great awareness, and, Mother Earth, this time for Mother Earth to be the teacher, to be, telling and reminding people, bringing us back to, she's here for a reason, and our children need to be outside. Mm-hmm. So I'm really grateful for you all showing up. And I'm Jody. I sometimes forget to introduce myself, but I'm a co-founder of Grandmother's Voice. And we began this collective a couple of years ago because it was important for us as we started to show up in our community and grow gardens and collaborate with our non-Indigenous community partners that were doing this work, to support them from the Indigenous perspective. And so, we're here with Andrea, who has been a great friend of Grandmother's Voice and myself, a neighbor in my community, and supporting my knowledge in so much. We've been growing together now for, I think, almost 3 years. So I'm grateful. Mary as well, you're awesome with the knowledge that you bring. And Kevin, it was fun to meet you. When I first drove out there, and you're like, "Hey, this is what I do," and I'm grateful that you're in this circle with us today. I'm in a working group today, so I wanted to make sure that I jumped on here and just shared that gratitude and made sure everybody made it here safe. So continue your conversation about the invasive species, because I find that is so it's just relevant. And I think, was it you, Andrea? We had this conversation this week about how the big box stores, where did that story come from? The big box stores are carrying more invasive species. And how do we stop that? Like, how do we start to talk about things that we know that we can help to control, or like that? To me seems like a low hanging fruit for groups like this. That we can start to put this kind of stuff on the radar and advocate for this kind of stuff, and instead of trying to do the stuff that's really heavy. I think that might be a fun little project for us to talk about and do and give action to. I'm gonna listen in the background today, but I'm gonna bail out right about now.
All right, thanks, Jody.
Love you guys.
I think picking up what Jody's saying, that is so true. And I went to just a local garden center just last week with a friend who's got 130 native species, plant species on her property. She is so into, trying to provide the diversity of all these native plants, and what she understands what insects they attract and how to care for them. And it's just a beautiful, what she has done is just outstanding. You can't imagine. But in walking through this garden center with her, we saw periwinkle, lily of the valley. I don't know if I saw goatweed, but I tell you that goatweed is all in my back. And no matter how much I try to pull it out, it grows in, that is real scourge. And these are all available at the garden centers. So it's knowing that those plants are not ones we should be buying. But then, as you say, Jody, how can we get behind, because they're not banned. I mean, I think Phragmites is one of the few plants which they're saying, no, that we won't, we're not allowed to sell that one. But these ones are they're for sale.
Let's ask Kevin that, because Kevin, I have a feeling you are good at this. How do we build some kind of network around that, or some kind of campaign around that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing, because walking through the gardens or walking through anywhere, it's all invasive. I mean, 80% of our weeds, like the purslane, is not from here. The lamb's quarters, the pigweed, pretty much none of it is native. And like even the dandelions, there's like so many varieties of dandelions. There was a native species of dandelions here. Yeah, so it's really difficult, because if we open up that can of worms, then really garden stores aren't going to have a lot of choice to sell things. And I think we have to look more at what is the most invasive and what is detrimental, because some things are just giving off plant exudate, like root exudates through their roots, that inhibit other things to grow, and we don't even realize that. So what was the example? Oh, my brain's slightly scorched. But yeah, I guess it's more developing our knowledge around which ones are really truly invasive and are going to be detrimental, and which ones we can kind of work with in our backyards that are pretty, that are still pollinators too. Like I know the garlic mustard was a big problem, and that was like, geez, going back 15, 20 years, and they were actually, the conservation authorities were paying people at the time 15 to 18 bucks an hour, which was good money, to spray glyphosate through the conservation lands, and they were killing all the mustard green. And my thought the whole time was like, what are you doing? You're killing kind of everything, but the mustard is going to choke out and kill the trees. And I was more thinking, this is a cycle. Like, sure, the mustard is invasive and it's not supposed to be here, but it's gonna figure itself out. Like, nature is pretty tough. Phragmites is really aggressive. Like, purple loosestrife was another one that was a big concern too. But as these ecological niches get taken over, it opens up for a lot of things to come in when the cycle kind of. So yeah, I'm not. It's an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah.
I think, though, that the garden centers, there are some pretty easy wins. Periwinkle, English ivy, goutweed, lily of the valley. Stop selling those.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some easy alternatives that, they won't lose any money if they stop selling those and replace
Sure.
it with better things.
I guess, and promote like the spotted bee balm instead of the other non-native bee balms because it's doing the same thing, right? It's the same plant. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I think a bigger part of the problem is the lack of the wild species, being able to get those at native garden centers. Because a lot of people say, well, where can I get these? And I say, well, you might be better to get the seeds and grow your own seedlings. And that's not, people don't want to do that. To make it faster, to make it quicker out into people's backyards, you really have to be able to provide those plants.
When I was at the garden center last week, I wanted to buy a trellis, and so I did a quick walk knowing that this talk was coming up. Mm-hmm. And I had promised to do all of the research and put together stuff, and I thought about it quite a bit, but never got around to compiling the resources for today's talk. But I did take some pictures, and next on the rack, there were 3 of those species. So there was the periwinkle, the English ivy, and the lamium, the goutweed. And right next to it were the 4 packs of the David Suzuki butterfly garden kits right next to each other. Yeah. And I thought, this is a perfect picture. If I knew how to share it on this.
Get a photo?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I thought, oh, the irony of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of like I used to go on this bicycle ride, and it was the Baysal margarine ride for heart. Like, not sure if margarine's good for our hearts, but anyways, opening another can of worms there.
Yes, yeah. But now that we start to know better about certain plants, I think it is time, if we used our collective voice, and I know there's a petition out there somewhere, or maybe petition's the wrong word, but I've got some resources and I will try and find them and share them post conversation around the Ontario Invasive Plant Council is trying to change the horticultural landscape, whatever regulations around what can be sold at the garden centers to try and remove some of these easy wins. Yes, it is a bigger and deeper and more complex conversation, but it's just people, if they don't know what the alternative is, that Grow Me Instead guide is great. So, you can't find English ivy anymore, plant this instead. You have this type of condition, plant these things.
Yeah, for sure.
I hear you typing.
I'm thinking about when you mentioned the Phragmites, and it's the worst, apparently the worst one in Ontario, because it's so aggressive and it's in all of our swales along the highways, especially. And most people I talk to are not aware that this is an invasive species. They think it's a lovely reed. So it is the fact that we don't know, and how do we get that information out? So we're doing actually this year a Phragmites poll to talk about, and how difficult it is to remove Phragmites so we're just trying to take a small patch out, and it'll be interesting to see if how successful we'll be even doing it.
Well, I would say, to set everyone's expectations, Phragmites removal, think of it as a 5-year plan. Because I did a project with a church here in Oakville. It was an intentional drainage swale off of the church parking lot, and it was originally beautifully landscaped, and over time the Phragmites got in. It was a small patch, and then pretty soon it was 80 feet by 20 feet wide. And we had a small grant through the Invasive Species Council to try and remove it and then replant it with native species. So we had a professional contractor come in, to help us with it, and it's starting to regrow. So you will get regrowth. A little bit of that root that's left behind or washes downstream will send up a whole new stand.
Mm-hmm.
So just, not to discourage you, it's worth doing.
Absolutely.
But it's never going to be controlled in one go of it. It takes the whole community to learn how to identify it, keep it contained, keep it from growing into a worse problem, and just chip away at it.
Yeah, a little bit of
we cut it down, and then when it came back up, we burnt it, and it still came back. It's a real tough son of a gun.
Yeah. I think for me, it's more about the educational piece, that this is not what we want growing here, because people are unaware of that. And I think, looking at it from the opposite perspective, common milkweed is one that's very aggressive and native, and we want it to grow, but most people don't want it in their backyard gardens. So I put some seeds in my garden, I guess a few years ago, and all of a sudden last year, a couple of shoots came up and made some lovely plants, although no flowers on it yet. I don't think I saw a flower on it. This year, it came up through most of my garden. So that's how quickly it spread. Mm-hmm. And I've gone around the garden in my backyard, and I've pulled it all up and put it into a pot. And my plan is to take it out and stick it in a natural space where it can grow like Phragmites, right? So it can just grow and flourish where it should. And I'm hoping that will work, but.
Pick the spots where you want things, and you can put an edging is another good one. As much as I don't like plastic, but there's all kinds of alternatives. But sticking that edging in and knowing how far the root systems go down. Just a bit of research, really. I did throw a bunch of websites there in the chat there. And the last one is a big list of different places that sell native plants, different garden centers.
Yeah, we'll move them from the private chat into the full chat.
Yeah.
I was going to comment on something Mary just said. Oh, yeah, just similar situation. I've got Canada anemone in my front yard, and it's a lovely shade garden plant, but my garden gets too much sun, and so it spreads aggressively.
Yeah.
But contained in less shade, it spreads at a much slower rate. So it's just knowing right plant for the right conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know staghorn sumac is another real aggressive one too. When it gets established, it starts to send out these long, thick roots and keeps coming up.
Yeah. But I mean, there's so many spaces too that, like, there's one area we're going to go and do a community cleanup in, and there's very little species diversity in this area. And to go and take some different, native plants, whether they're aggressive or not, like some Canadian anemone would be lovely in there with the milkweeds. And then it'll turn it into a butterflyway if we put enough species in there. And here it is. Right now, it doesn't do much because it's just too monoculture.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly just grasses and maybe a lot of garlic mustard and, as you say, with lamb's quarters, I'm sure is in there.
As a society, do we like things too neat and orderly and controlled and confined to just let go a little?
Then this is a space where you could just let it go, let it do its thing, just put it in,
That's my philosophy, hence the big beard. Just let it go. Let it grow. There
You're
you
nicely balanced.
I think that's a song, a Disney song. Let it
go.
We'll make our own version.
And the other thing, as far as encouraging the right things, I'm a big fan of looking when I go for a walk. Our gardens are always have a bit of a shade spot, and the edge of the forest is a good place to look. But just see what's growing there, and if it flowers, you can go back there in a few weeks or a month and collect seed. Is always a good way to do things, and then spread it where you want it. I do that with all the vegetables, and yeah, and it's just such an easy way to, even like if you buy stuff at a farmer's market, you can ask somebody if it is isolated. So like peppers is a good example of hot peppers or whatever. You can ask, hey, how big is your plot of peppers? And if he's like, oh, it's like 10 rows, 200 feet, then you have a very good guarantee that it's going to be that same pepper. And so I don't buy a lot of seeds anymore. I'll just ask farmers what they've grown, and if it's open pollinated, I'll just save that pepper and dry it out, and then I got 300 seeds per one small pepper. It's insane. It's a great way to go.
It is good. And this is the whole point of seed libraries and seed swaps, is to, save seeds from 2 peppers and give away 300 seeds.
That's it. Like all the raspberries and stuff, the brambles that are along the forest edge. Another great thing, just go pick some fruit, take the kids out or whoever, and, one for me, one for the seed bank, one for home. Yeah. And then, it's just such an easy way to do things, and it's cost effective at a time when we all need to be pinching pennies, I think.
Although we do have to be careful around encouraging people to forage and seed collect. There are protocols around how to do that ethically and responsibly, and leaving enough for the natural ecosystem that it's supporting, the birds, the bees, whatever else is naturally using that. So just a little side note or a footnote around make sure you're doing it in a responsible manner.
Take for yourself, and not to make like a business out of it or whatever. I guess that's a big issue around a lot of the mushrooms and stuff too. It's like, having a mesh bag where the spores are going to fall out, and knowing how to safely collect things and not trounce the forest down in search of all these delicious mushrooms and different plants and stuff.
Yeah, and I saw Conservation Halton at the beginning of March, I want to say, put out a social media campaign around do not collect plants from Conservation Halton properties.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't even imagine having to say that, to think that many people do it.
Especially, this time of year with the trilliums, I'm sure there's people, well, they're almost done now, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there looking for trilliums, and, trilliums do not transplant well at all. You just destroy them. You don't move.
Yeah, again, and that's one of those know your species, right? Because a lot of that is like fungally dominant soil in a forest and shade and all that. You can't just pick things up and move them, and
Mm-hmm.
Plus, they're growing there because that's probably a good space for them to grow in, right? To move them is kind of sad because they're happy where they are.
And too, like the more research you do and the more you learn and experiment yourself, but sometimes you can just take clippings of leaves and stuff, and then with some rooting hormone, and then that's a really beautiful way for one bush that has 1,000 leaves on it. If you just take a couple leaves and you figure out how to get them to make roots, I've seen people doing the banana thing, and there's so many different things, and I love taking like even dragon fruit. We started dragon fruits in our house because it was delicious, and I'm like, let's save some seeds. And but you can take clippings. Are a great way to not kill anything, and you just take a couple of leaves off, and then hopefully you can extrapolate that and plant some out, and give back too.
Exactly.
And for those who maybe don't have the time or knowledge, I would say do some research, support a local business that sells native species. Kevin, I haven't managed to move your links from the chat, but I just filled up the back of my van from Guyana Say on Six Nations for the Butterfly Way project that I'm doing. Ontario Plants on plants.ca. We'll move these over if you don't mind helping with that. Do your research, figure out what's a native species, not try and stick to the native as opposed to the cultivars. If it has a name in quotation marks after it, it's usually crossbred with something or selected for certain characteristics, try and stick as close as you can to the native version of it, and check out the Grow Me Instead guide. Just
And if
education.
Do what I did. Go down to the store and get the David Suzuki 4-pack. It's wonderful. You get immediately 4 plants in your garden you didn't have before, and next year they're going to be glorious.
Yeah. And they're not that expensive, so helps nature.
Yeah.
Suzuki for the win.
Yeah.
They did a good job.
All right, I'm going to move these comments over, keep chatting for 2 more minutes, and then we'll wrap it up and find a topic for next week.
Yeah, actually that did help me because I did get a cup plant, which is really quite large, and a couple of other nice ones. But then when I saw the David Suzuki 4-pack, I thought it was such a win because I could immediately put 4 plants that were well established already, because they were quite large. They weren't tiny seedlings. And I got a blanket flower. I got some bergamot, some, I don't know if wasn't milkweed. I can't remember what the other ones were, but beautiful 4-pack, and they're already blooming.
Well, amazing.
One is,
and they're clustered together. So you can do a sun pack, a shade pack, and I think they even have a rain garden pack. And if they don't, then we'll figure that out for next year.
Yeah.
A real easy way to get things, there's 3 things, but to get things rooted, you can boil onion skins is one way, and then there's a compound in there that will come out, and you can let it cool, obviously, and then water things with that. Willow trees are full of salicylic acid, and that is another big rooting hormone, so you can just pulverize, pound up willow, and those are such dirty trees. They're dropping willow all the time, and there's so many around. And I mean, I just beat it up and stick a heavy weight on it in a bucket, and then a few days later you'll get this syrup that comes out, and you can just dilute that and water with it, and that's a big rooting hormone. And then aloe. If you match again aloe plants in your house, take a long branch off and chop it up fine and mash that up, and put that in soil or water with it, and those are all good things that get things roots moving and things growing.
Amazing.
That's fascinating. I did not know that at all.
It's all easy. It's all around us, right? It's just like learning these knowledge, and then it's one thing to watch YouTube videos and talk about all these things, but get practical, get your hands dirty, and just try something. Who cares if it doesn't work? And who cares if you forget to water it? Oh, well, that was a failed experiment. Try it again another time.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Love it. All right. So what are we going to talk about next week? Any ideas?
I don't know.
I don't know how to reforest the world.
All right. Oh, love that. Yeah, I just did a Miyawaki forest with Halton District School Board.
Oh.
So we can talk about forest topics.
Yeah.
I had a friend who had a bumper sticker that said trees are the answer. And then I had another friend that had fungus is the answer. And then another friend who said friends don't let friends eat farm salmon. So those are all very appropriate bumper stickers. Good food for thought kind of thing.
Love it. Love it.
Fantastic.
All right. Good talk, guys.
Yeah.
If you think of anything other than forest and reforesting the world, let me know. But otherwise, we'll go with that for next week.
Nice to
Will do.
Have fun in the garden.
Yeah.
Remember your sunscreen.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. Okay, bye for now.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Oh, I think we're still live. Jody